It's the Fulhamish podcast, your independent voice of Fulham FC. My name's Sammy James. Welcome to the show. Today we're looking ahead to our game against Southampton on Sunday. Don't say it. Don't say it. But have you got a bad feeling about this one? Feels a little bit inevitable, doesn't it? We'll also look back at Saturday's draw at Liverpool. We can draw it away at Anfield, but you just know what's coming on Saturday at Craven Cottage. And we've got a few questions at the end of the pod as ever. I'm joined by Jack Collins. Hello.
Hello, Sammy. How you doing?
I'm okay, thank you. Feels like a while since I've done a podcast.
Yeah, it's been a little while. We had Peter on last weekend. That was nice.
Yeah.
It was good to have him back. Enjoyed his company as ever. It's a shame that he's having to cover so much Chelsea these days, but his love affair with Fulham, I think, still rang true through the course of that episode. So, yeah, it was lovely to have him back on the show, and the only thing that was missing was you.
Yeah, I didn't take it fully personally that the only pod that Peter's been available for in the last few months was the only one where I wasn't here.
Yeah, look,
I didn't take that personally at all.
You know, man, just journalist things, right? Calling favours here and there. That's the bits we do.
I had a tweet from Ungao95 who, after the last pod on Monday, which I never normally host anyway, he said, send out the search party for @Mr. Sammy James.
Look, man, you're a busy man.
I didn't realise that my absence was that keen. Well, but it only keenly felt by one person.
I think you can, it was one of those nice moments. You can take that as a real compliment. So there you go.
Producer Liz is here as well. Hello.
Hi. I'm pleased to be back. I've also had a couple of weeks away, not on the buttons, but excited to butter when I feel like it.
Nice.
It's been a solo production job basically for the last couple of weeks. You lot have been fanning around all over the place, and it's just been me and me computer. Wasn't even allowed in the studio. Got banned from the studio for a couple of weeks. So it's nice to be back. It's nice to be back in this new setup.
Yeah, we changed the studio around as well. If you're watching this on YouTube, you might be able to. It looks almost identical. It's just in a different part of the room.
No, the studio looks great. There's going to be 2 studios in here soon, which is exciting. Yeah. Very exciting times.
Big times at the Footwork Media studio. If you want one next year, then send me a message. Jack, let's do a final word on Liverpool on Saturday. Obviously, brilliant to get a point at Anfield. It's one heck of a result. And you look at Fulham's last 4 kind of results: Spurs away, Brighton at home, Arsenal at home, Liverpool away. To not lose any of those is seriously impressive. I did the quick take afterwards and just couldn't work out if I should be like happy that we got the point or like slightly disappointed that we conceded 2 points with a few minutes to go. And I got some interesting reactions to a tweet as well that I did where I was kind of like, we have dropped 17 points from winning positions. I had a few people be like, God, no, some people will never be happy.
Yeah,
I was just a bit conflicted because it's like when you're so close to something that we probably, ultimately, I'm sure the Fulham players will have been thinking on the way down, like, it's good to get a point, but they're being disappointed.
Well, they were. The post-match interviews, they said as much. And, I think Antonee Robinson was the first one to come out and say it and basically be like, look, it's obviously good to get a point at the league leaders away from home. But the way that the game panned out, and with them having 10 men for long periods of it, we're disappointed not to come away with all 3. So I think it's a reasonable take to have. There's somewhere in the middle there. And I take your point about the 17 points drop from winning positions. And I think that it's a salient one within the context, right? Because actually you kind of look at some of the results that have gone our way. Obviously, we dropped 2 points from a winning position from Arsenal. We were probably slightly lucky to get that point. We dropped 3 points from a winning position against Wolves. No complaints with the outcome, even if the result looked a little bit harsher than perhaps the actual game was. There are some of those results you're like, yes, we were winning, but we were winning in like the 4th minute.
Yeah, I think it's like the Aston Villa at home. That technically is 3 points lost from a winning position because we did take the lead. But I think
that one's a bit different though, because actually if you score the penalty, then suddenly things are probably slightly different. So like, I think you can have complaints about that game. I don't think you can have complaints about the Wolves game. I don't think you can have major complaints about the Arsenal game. Like some of those points are, fair drops. I think we can maybe make an argument that Fulham have dropped 7-8 points that we should have held on to, and I'm going to exclude Anfield from that because 10 men or not, it's a difficult place to go, and Liverpool were excellent and deserve their flowers for that. So you can look at it, and I think it's probably fair to say that we've dropped 7 or 8 points that we probably shouldn't have, and that's where I'm kind of at on it. And I think the 17 maybe in proportion potentially looks a little bit high. but I can understand where you're coming from just as a kind of, it's a fact, right? Like what you've done there is state a fact.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think it's kind of, oh, Fulham deserved all of those points in a way, but equally there's something to be said for the fact that we have been really resilient and we have been, very adaptable. And I wrote a piece on Monday on the Fulhamish website, basically talking about the fact that this has shown that Fulham can go into the ring with almost anybody and come out bloodied and a little bit bruised, but you're not knocked down. And, we talk about these last 4 games as a spell of 14 days. Spurs, Brighton, Arsenal, Liverpool. If you'd offered me 6 points to come out of that unbeaten, I would have snapped your hand off for those points. So I think we can take that with, yes, we can be a little bit disappointed with the outcome of the game given the circumstances. But actually, when you actually watch the game and you look back at it on balance, I think a point was probably just about fair. Whether Fulham could have done more to actually kick on against 10 men, especially at 2-1 up, and not allow ourselves to be put under that pressure, perhaps. But equally, it's a little bit of a fool's errand leaving yourselves open to Liverpool counterattacks, especially when you're playing a second choice centre-back partnership at that time. So it's a bit 6 of one, half dozen of the other, I think.
Yeah, the one that I think that I didn't really clock on Saturday how big a chance it was that I actually was kind of surprised about is Raul Jimenez after Wilson gets fouled. Admittedly, had he stuck that in the back of the net,
I don't think it's a red card.
It's not a red card.
Yeah.
Gary Lineker literally got the law wrong in match of the day.
I'm not sure. Like, so if he scores, fair enough. Like, I think that you have to you've played the advantage, and therefore it's not a denial of a goal scoring opportunity because a goal has been scored.
Yeah.
Whereas it's a slightly different kind of letter of the law.
It's quite simple. It's the player. The player is denied the goal scoring opportunity unless there is a goal scored.
Yeah.
If a player is denied the goal scoring opportunity, it doesn't matter that it then fell to Raul Jimenez. That doesn't get Andy Robertson off the hook. I was quite shocked watching match of the day, just being like, has anyone had a word? And it felt like he almost maybe went off script there, because I felt like
he's leaving at the end of the season.
Yeah,
he's gone rogue. Yeah. He's gone mad.
Because I felt like Ashley Williams and maybe Theo Walcott, I think, who was with him on Saturday, didn't fully agree with his take, and I was just like, it's just it just is the law.
Because I was watching a friend of mine who I did the Liverpool preview with, AGT from the COP TV, on the DR Sports weekend roundup show, and he was like, look, on match of the day, Gary Lineker said it wasn't a red card, and the entire rest of the panel were like, obviously it's a red card. Like absolutely shut down immediately. And I thought that was interesting in terms of, you can make an argument, I suppose, but by the letter of the law, it is a red card. And look, Wilson does really, really well to anticipate that and get through. But would you rather be 1-0 up there against 10 men, or would you rather have, it be 2-0? I don't know what the answer is. I think I'd probably say 1-0 with the 10 men and the free kick. Imagine if we buried the free kick. It would have been absolutely apoplectic.
I think I'd take 2, but it was a really tight call, because I think 2-0 half-time, Liverpool have 11 men. I still have this weird feeling that we're not going to get 3 points from that game. But when it was 1-0 at half-time and they had 10 men, whilst I still was like, this is far from done, I did think, my God, what an opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, what did you make of Fulham's tactical kind of setup against this team? Because Arne Slot did some very clever things. I thought that the 3-3-3 he played at times was incredibly bold, and it relied on Gravenberch and Szoboszlai doing an immense amount of work, which they did really, really well.
Yeah.
Do you think we were slightly too compact, slightly too defensive coming up against those 10 men?
I think ultimately we just didn't take advantage of the chaos that brought. There was so much space sometimes at the back. It did just feel like...
It felt like way too long for Adama to come on.
Oh my God.
I was waiting for that reaction.
I couldn't believe that we made those first set of substitutions and one of them wasn't Adama Traore. I was like, oh, you have the perfect person on your bench. I mean, Markin must have had his reasons, maybe, but I was staggered. I just think, I think Fulham did really well. I still think ultimately I'm watching the same Fulham match over and over and over and over again, where we are so good going forward and almost like taking advantage of the space. And then it's always just the final ball, the final pass, the decision. There was one in the second half where Alex Iwobi could have played through Raul Jimenez, literally a straight pass, and he's through on goal and he went wide. And look, everyone's guilty of it. It's just Fulham's decision-making in key moments.
I think there's something to be said for the fact that obviously we talked about this in the preview show last week, but Fulham set up in these big games, in the Arsenal game, in the City game, and then again here against Liverpool with that shape where Iwobi basically fills in that Bobby De Cordova-Reid role at right wing back. And I think when they go down to 10 men, there's a kind of reluctance to shift out of it. And I think that maybe that's the move that happens there that really does change the game. Maybe Fulham go back into that sort of 4-2-3-1 shape. Iwobi goes over to that left-hand side and we start to see a little bit more of him in those areas. That's, I think, what I would have liked to see. Now, I watched the game in a slightly bizarre manner because I was at a wedding and the ceremony finished about 5-3 and I was like, phenomenal. And I was with a load of Liverpool fans who had the game on a screen. So we're standing around sort of watching it, but also pretending to be involved in the wedding.
Yeah, sure.
I was a groomsman and usher, so I couldn't really, disappear for 90 minutes at a time. So by the time I went back and watched the full 90 minutes, I knew the outcome, and therefore you watch it in a slightly different way because you know what's happening. You're trying to pick kind of holes in what you're watching and kind of analyze it in a slightly different capacity. So I think you can watch it back and think, that's frustrating. Not in necessarily what you're saying about Iwobi's pass there, because I think that's frustrating whether you watch it then live or indifferent.
Yeah.
But I think tactically, knowing that it ended at 2-2, there is a sense, I think, I'm like, Fulham shift up the gears, find yourself in a little bit more of an attacking position. Obviously, there are going to be opportunities for Liverpool if you do that. But I think that you can take advantage of a weakened backline, of a backline that didn't bring in another left back. They don't have one, who were able, had to kind of shift to a point where Gravenberch was basically playing the entire midfield on his own at one point. Can you overwhelm them in those areas? Just a shout for Andreas, who I thought was brilliant. Came back into the side. I thought he might. I thought this might be the game that allowed us to kind of go sort of 5-3-2-ish with Andreas doing the most attacking of those midfield three roles. It's exactly how it played out. I wasn't expecting it to be Harry Wilson up top with Raul Jimenez, but it really was. And actually, I thought that the balance of that side, 11 versus 11, would have caused Liverpool problems. I actually almost think that them going down to 10 men kind of threw us out of kilter a little bit in how we were trying to play the game.
Yeah, I wanted to have a word on Antonee Robinson. Obviously, 2 assists, and for the most part, kept Mo Salah quiet. Obviously, Mo Salah did assist the first goal.
Yeah, but not from his right wing role.
No, fair. He's just growing week on week, and it feels like the talk about him, the chatter about his future. He's an interesting player, isn't he? We both work with Men in Blazers, and so we know maybe more than the usual kind of Brit might do about US soccer. And it feels like building up to 2026, feels like he might actually be one of the poster boys for the World Cup as well.
Yeah.
And the kind of love, and it feels like the secret's maybe out now. I feel like the rest of the league is now waking up to what a fullback he is. I'm now watching him every game and just love watching him. He makes so many interceptions. He's so often in the right place. And as we saw on Saturday, now also seeing some end products. I mean, the cross that Pereira puts in, yes, it is an Antonee Robinson assist, but I think all the credit has to go to Andreas. But the breakaway and then the cross for Muniz, again, Muniz has a little bit to do there.
It's a great finish, actually.
Is excellent as well. And I feel like, is the secret out?
Yeah, I think it is. I don't think it's wild to suggest that Antonee Robinson is now the best left back in the Premier League. That's where we're at.
It's actually, because Fulham fans have been saying this, and I feel like sometimes we say it slightly tongue-in-cheek.
I don't really know who you put in there ahead of him. Andy Robertson, clearly, as we've seen, in a slight decline. City don't really have a left back.
Yeah.
There's probably an argument you could make for Marc Cucurella, but he got himself sent off at the end of the game for throwing himself around, which is very silly. Destiny Udogie, I don't think has come into his full potential. Yeah, I think that he'll definitely be in that conversation. Honestly, if you was asked me to pick the 2 best left backs in the Premier League right now, I would say it's Antonee Robinson and Milos Kerkez at Bournemouth. That's where I'm at. Maybe Ryan Aït-Nouri last season would have been in this conversation, but I don't think you can justify putting any Wolves players in any best of anything, seems right now. I really don't know if there's many players who you'd have ahead of either of those ones. And I don't think it's any surprise that when Liverpool are talking about bringing in a new left back, those are the 2 names at the top of the list. I don't think Liverpool will move for Antonee Robinson. I cannot see FSG, with the model that they have, spending that amount of money on a 27-year-old. Kerkez is 22. I can see them doing that. that's where I kind of foresee that. That doesn't mean Antonee Robinson isn't going to leave. Like, and I really, honestly, I hope against all hopes that he stays at Craven Cottage. You know, I think him being given the armband is probably a little bit of a nod to that, as kind of, look, you're loved and respected, and you play every week here. There is, very little pressure, I suppose, in terms of what you're delivering, but you keep delivering, and there is a whole lot of love for you across the board. I don't know, what he's worth to Fulham. I don't know if anyone else is going to pay for a 27-year-old. So I suppose that's the kind of question of actually if he leaves or not. And obviously he's got, a fair bit to go on his contract as well. So that's not to say that he won't leave, although I'm keeping my fingers crossed, but I don't think it will be Liverpool.
Isn't it mad to think how long he's been at Fulham now? I saw the video going around because Ademola Lookman won African Player of the Year, and he actually did an Instagram post about... I think it was along the lines of, you saw me at my lowest and now you see it at my highest. And
it was the Panenka.
He was referencing the Panenka penalty against West Ham as his lowest, which I thought was interesting. I was like, it was just one missed penalty, mate, in a COVID match that ultimately meant very little to anyone. But
I got to butt in. Sammy, it was so bad.
Oh, I know it was bad.
It was... I think if you're trying to epitomise a lowest moment of a player's career, it's not bad. The Premier League put up a video of all the worst penalties that the Premier League has ever seen on like the 10th of November 2020, and it was just after that missed penalty because it was obviously so bad that it had to prompt
Yeah,
that.
it's like this weekend seeing all those things, but like, what's the best save in Premier League history after Emi Martinez's save this weekend?
Exactly.
Like, it's so bad, it's so good in this case, but so bad in Ademola Lookman's case that they've clearly gone to it. I found someone liked a tweet that I replied to Ademola Lookman in 2020 yesterday, so I found his tweet after that game. He wrote, "After yesterday's mistake, I take full responsibility and the onus for it. To my teammates, manager and the supporters, I vowed to put the next one in. I will not let one failure hold me back." At Fulham FC. Well, it famously didn't. He's gone on and been excellent. I replied to him saying, "Good man yourself, long way to go." Thanks, Jack. I'm sure that really cheered him up.
Yeah. It's down to you that he scored a hat-trick in the Europa League final.
Man, I'm just saying, we sent him on his way.
Anyway, what I was trying to get at was just, I saw Antonee Robinson in the background of that video.
Yeah.
And he joined in 2018.
Yeah, he's been here for 6 years.
And I still kind of see him almost like he's a new player for us.
This is his 7th season, I think, as a Fulham player.
Yeah. I mean, he still doesn't have a chant, really. I never hear his name. I know that he kind of has one, but...
Well, the problem was that they re-upped the Ryan Sessegnon "Here's to You" for Antonee Robinson, and then Ryan Sessegnon came back, so he lost his chance.
But even when Sessegnon wasn't here, I never heard it.
Yeah,
it's a weird...
It's one that only really comes out away day. Yeah. It's not a home chant.
I don't even hit that much away. It's just an interesting, wasn't it? I think like for so long, Fulham fans were on the fence about whether he was good enough to play for Fulham. Whether he was good enough to get ahead of Joe Bryan.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, it's not that long ago since we were having the Antonee Robinson, Joe Bryan debates.
And now we're having the debate whether is he the first or second best left back in the Premier League.
Yeah. We did get a question about this, and I think they might have addressed it, but they were like, "Is there better left backs in the world?" And I was like, "Yeah, there are still better left backs in the world. I think Nuno Mendes, Teo Hernandez probably. There's a few you'd be putting in that. Ferland Mondi maybe. There's a few you'd be putting in that conversation. Alphonso Davies, but I mean, where he is from where he was." And that lack of end product. Last year, what was the call that I made? How many assists did I think he was going to get? Was it 15? I've been double figures.
Yeah, I think it was double figures.
And I think he came just short. But he's well on course this year. I was just a year early.
He's just like, the thing about Robinson is he's like learned the game and grown and developed. I don't think it was wrong that we had those discussions about him. And he still is kind of capable of the odd kind of weird moments, even now. But yeah, it is crazy that...
He's always been a brilliant one-on-one defender. And I think that often went like under the radar. But how good he was defensively, because he was really fast. I think people were like, oh, he just has really good recovery speed. But this is not the first time he's locked down Mo Salah. We've seen him tuck up Bukayo Saka. We've seen him tuck up some of the Premier League's best wingers. And I think that when you're kind of looking at that And thinking about it, that's not new. It's not that we haven't seen Antonee Robinson work in those situations before, that actually, his defensive ability has always kind of been there. It was his end product, as you say, that really did feel like it was lacking. That frustration with the crosses. And look, I still don't think he's the best crosser of the ball in the entire world, but he's learned when and where to execute. And, I was looking at a stat the other day. It says Fulham's crossed the ball, I think, more than any other team in the Premier League apart from Leicester, which is kind of wild considering we don't score that many goals or headed goals, but obviously low centres count in that as well. And I think he has learned how and where to deliver from in order to give himself the best chance of finding a teammate. And that's what I think has developed so much in his game, that he'll be like, okay, if this cross isn't on, I'm not going to aimlessly swing one to the back post. I'm going to try and play a 1-2. I'm going to try and play something inside that allows me to get to the byline. He's a bit of a throwback player. It's not that many left backs you see these days still doing the whole wide overlap, get to the byline, pull it back. That was kind of very, very in fashion 4 or 5 years ago, right? And we talk about those teams where everyone was driving to the byline time and time again. That has kind of gone out with this inverted fullbacks thing. And yet Robinson is a bit of a throwback to that kind of age. He still likes it most when there's a player who wants to cut inside, and Marco Silva's managed that really, really well. He doesn't have wingers on that side of the pitch generally who want to hug the touchline, and they do cut inside to make things happen, whether that was Willian last year or Wobie in Fulham's kind of, I think, first choice 11 this year. They're all players who drift inside to allow that space to open up down the left, and we attack primarily down that side, and so much is to do with what he brings to the table.
Yeah. All right. We will take a break there. Afterwards, we'll look ahead to Sunday's game against Southampton. This episode of Fulhamish is brought to you by NordVPN, which is the tool I use to watch all the festive football by changing the location of either my tablet, my laptop, or my phone. It is particularly perfect for those 3 p.m. kickoffs which aren't available here in the UK. All you need to do is go to NordVPN, change the location of your laptop or whatever device you're using, and then you can access platforms which are not only much cheaper than those here in the UK, they also show all the games, unlike what we have, where we only get a fraction of them. It means that I can watch every single Fulham game, whether it's on the telly or not. I also use NordVPN in order to access cheaper flights and hotels, as quite often, switch your location and you'll find those become a bit less expensive as well. You can use NordVPN on up to 10 devices, so I share my login with friends, family, and colleagues. And right now, you can get a great deal by going to nordvpn.com/Fulhamish. Not only will you get to access a great rate, but you get 4 extra months as well, and it's completely risk-free thanks to Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. So to get that great rate plus 4 extra months, go to nordvpn.com/Fulhamish. That's nordvpn.com/Fulhamish. Part 2 of the Fulhamish podcast. It is Sammy here with Jack Collins on the Thursday Club. If you're going to Southampton on Sunday, make sure you check out Craft Beer Co. either before or after the game. A beautiful family-run pub with a wonderful selection of beers and ales. It is located at Hammersmith at Broadway and is the perfect place for a pre- or post-match pint. Jack, we're playing the bottom of the league side on Sunday, who have barely been able to buy a win. They conceded 5 in the first half against Spurs on Sunday. They also play in midweek whilst we have a rest. Why on earth am I nervous?
I don't know. Just Fulham, man. Like, this is it. This is what we do. This is the history of the Fulham in so many ways. Look, we shouldn't be nervous. I was talking to my friend and colleague Sam Ty last night. He writes the programme notes for Southampton, and he was like, how can Saints get a Fulham? And I was like, well, we're actually quite difficult to break down most of the time. There are obviously exceptions to the rules, but there isn't a kind of obvious way to get at this Fulham side, especially if Berger and Lukic are playing as kind of twin sixes. And I was like, how do Fulham set up to get Southampton? He was like, you don't need to. They'll give you the ball. They will give you the opportunity. I was like, do you play Smith Rowe to unlock the door? He's like, the door's been unlocked all season. And I was like, right, okay, fair enough. He's like, there's no bolt. They just leave it and hope no one walks in. Like, that's exactly where they're at right now. Now, obviously, Russell Martin was sacked after the game against Tottenham. And Simon Rusk is in charge for this game against Liverpool that takes place after we record this. So we'll see how Saints get on in that one. I just think there's going to be an element of looking at this and thinking, is there going to be a new manager bounce? I don't think so, because whilst new manager bounces exist, I think there are too many intrinsic problems in this Southampton side, even if they were to get a manager in before Sunday's game who was able to take charge, which at the moment, we're sort of midway through Wednesday. There's no sense of it.
No one's, even if they appoint it, it'll be them watching from the cottage.
Stands, yeah.
Like at this point.
So what you've got is a temporary manager in charge, and I think that's probably a good thing that we have. They have a game in midweek because it means there isn't going to be loads of time to work on things. I imagine that the instructions will be to be more direct, will be to stop faffing around with the ball at the back. And I know that sounds incredibly sort of like old school Route 1-y, but I like Fulham playing out from the back, right? I very much enjoy it. And I think that with the caliber of players we have, there are still going to be mistakes here and there, but actually it opens things up. And you look at the way that the first goal happened against Arsenal, which was Fulham's only real passing move of the entire game. And actually the way that we worked the ball and worked the space was exceptional. So we have the capacity to do that. Saints, I'm afraid, don't at the moment. That's the thing that has really hurt them. And Ange Postecoglou said it after the Tottenham Saints game. He was like, I love playing against teams like this because they go at us. And you're like, you can't do that if you're a newly promoted side playing like you're a team competing for Europe. Fulham are, right now, for better or for worse, and whether this is the same at the end of the season or not, currently in a place where we are competing for a European space. So if Saints try to play us at our own game, we will win this game. If they don't, which I assume they won't, and I assume they're going to try and tighten things up, try not to faff about with it so much. I think Aaron Ramsdale will be back between the sticks. Looks like he was close.
Is he not booked for Sky Sports this Sunday?
I don't know. It looked like it was weird because that whole thing was strange in that basically the Southampton media was saying he was touch and go for the Spurs game.
I couldn't believe that he was the pundit for TNT.
It just felt really bizarre. Like in that whole thing, I was like, I thought you were. How did you book this? I thought you were close to recovery. So I don't know. But, it did seem like a bit of a strange one in that one. But he should be back. There are some good players in this side. The problem is that quite a lot of the players in this side have either been injured or are in this sort of weird place where they haven't been wanted by the club. So Paul Onuachu, who scored a lot of goals in Turkey last season, came in sort of at the end of their last season in the Premier League to try and resurrect them and didn't really work because he was never going to play in a Ruben Seller system. But him and there's also Armin Bella-Kotchap, who's still at the club, who is a German international, and is just sitting around doing nothing because he failed a medical on his way out, and the club decided they were just not going to use him for the rest of the season. Maybe that changes under a new manager, right? Kamaldeen Sulemana still at the club. Haven't seen almost anything of Sulemana all season, partly due to injury, partly due to selections. There are still some good footballers in here, and I wonder if they go to something a little bit more solid to try and get the best out of these next couple of games, just until a new manager comes in to try and build a platform. But none of that changes the fact that Fulham, if they play to full capacity, should win this game of football.
I think what I've seen from Southampton this season is occasional bits of magic.
Yeah, they've been competitive in about 15-minute spells.
Well, also, they're just capable of scoring a very, very good goal.
There's some great players in this side. Like Cam Archer's a wonderful player. Matej Fernandes, good player. Like they've signed okay. Shiguara's a decent footballer, but it just feels like nothing's there knitting it all together. They didn't feel like they had any sort of cohesive ability to do something for 90 minutes.
It feels like also we have got experience in this department because we've had so many promotions. We've done the full range of promotions. We've done the Southampton promotion, and then we've gone the completely opposite, and we've done the we're not going to play any football promotion, and then we've done the sensible promotion with Marco Silva, where we've actually kind of amalgamated the two. Watching the Southampton team does remind me of that Slav team.
Yes.
In the sense that we thought, because we played pretty football all the way to winning the playoffs in 2018, that we could go up to the Premier League. We could put Tom Kearney and Steffi Hansen in centre midfield and just.
Well, we didn't famously. We spent £100 million on players and then just played.
Well, yeah, we put John McAllister. We thought John McAllister and Tom Kearney would be a nice, robust midfield pivot, and everyone just walked straight through us.
Yeah.
And Slav obviously played a penalty pretty early for not adapting. And Marco's done a hybrid. Marco's not abandoned all his principles when he came up, and we absolutely swashbuckled the league more than probably many championship teams that we've seen in recent years. Yes, we didn't get a record points total, but we did score the most amount of goals ever.
Yeah.
And it was probably more down to complacency that we didn't set the points record more than anything else. But we knew when we came up when we could kind of open it up and have a bit of fun. But at the same time, we became very efficient and we went back to a little bit of the stick it in long to Mitro.
Adaptable, versatile. Like the things that we keep repeating about this side, the things that make us good right now are the things that Marco Silva instilled when we came up, right? That we had different game plans for playing against different opposition, that we could beat teams around us and below us at home by opening up games a little bit more and, you know, kind of opening the throttle out. And in games against bigger sides, we didn't get loads of points against the big teams in that first year up, but we were compact and we were competitive and we didn't get battered.
Yeah.
Like we stuck together. And actually, I would say that Saints, until the last couple of weeks, haven't really been battered.
Yeah.
They've just lost a lot of games. And there were a couple of those that maybe they should have won. The Leicester game where they were 3-1 up, the Ipswich game they were winning and conceded in the last minute. Like, they're the ones that kill you, right? And that's why they're on 5 points and they're at the bottom of the league. They're probably better than those 5 points suggest, but not by loads.
Yeah, they're not. I think anyone that thinks they are Derby County bad, they are not Derby County bad.
No. I mean, look, it's actually quite a good side. It's like, when you look through the players in it, you're like, why is this side so bad? Part of it is that Jan Bednarek cannot play in a back two. He's incredibly slow. And people get behind him time and time again. Taylor Harwood-Bellis is being asked to do everything in that defensive line. But like, you actually look at the players on the pitch and you're like,
Yeah.
some of them I would be quite happy with if Fulham sides. Like, that's not there's not a slight on any of these things. I think what's interesting is that this season, I was saying this to Sam yesterday, that it stinks of that Slavisa season from Fulham. Like, because they are now at a point where they haven't been able to defend, where are they going to try? They either admit they've got this completely wrong, in which case they should have sacked Russell Martin 6 weeks ago because it was clear this wasn't going to change, and they appoint a defensive manager who tries to tighten it up. But whether they have the personnel to actually do that, I don't think they have enough physicality in the midfield. Joe Aribo's a decent footballer and a bit of a duel winner, but generally you look at that midfield and you're thinking, who in there is going to give you the physicality you need to compete in the Premier League? Something we did really well when we came up. Polina coming in, but also the players we put around him, competitive animals in terms of winning the ball and winning duels in those areas. That's how you stay up. It's exactly the same what Brentford did. Like, they brought in there and they were like, we're going to be hard to break down. In the middle of the pitch, you are not running through us. That was the lesson we learned from that first and maybe the second promotion in both of those ways. Southampton haven't learned that lesson. And that makes them very easy to play through in the middle if you have some physicality, which we do.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting about this is they now either go and appoint a manager who's defensively capable and they go, right, we need to try and lock up the back door for the first time this season. And do you have the players to do that? And are they going to survive doing it? No, we've seen that. We know how that works. Or they bring in another progressive manager, at which point you go, well, you're definitely not going to stay up doing that. Yeah. So, like, they're kind of caught between the rock and the hard place now, in that if they were going to stick with a progressive manager, they had a manager who brought them out of the Championship. Do you just stick with your guns? And
that's what I've kind of thought about this whole thing. Like, some of the names appointed, I've seen like Carlos Corberán. Why the hell would Carlos Corberán go there? You've got to.
There's a lot more money at Southampton than there is at West Brom.
But you're going to be in the Championship again next season.
Sure,
and
with a better squad.
But with West Brom, you might. I mean, I don't think they're in and around the playoff picture, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
You might get promoted with them. Like, why would you go there now? I saw Graham Potter. I was like, are you dreaming? Like, he's never going to go there. He doesn't want to be back in the Championship. I mean,
Potter might take a 6-month contract. I think they might do.
You wonder if, like, I kind of wonder if they might go like Big Sam, kind of. Well, I would love to see it.
The actual one that would have been interesting, but it won't happen, would have been Gary O'Neill, who actually has sort of dug teams out of these weird little holes before, but famously spent quite a lot of his career at Portsmouth, so is absolutely not going to go and sign to be the Southampton manager.
I've got a little bit of intel on Simon Rask.
Oh, okay.
Maybe even a little quiz for you guys. Which division do you think he was sacked from as a manager for not getting good enough results, no internal issues, just results based, in October 2021.
I know the answer, so you can guess first.
Which division?
Well, yeah, which club? It was a club in the division at the time, and they weren't getting good enough results, so they sacked their manager, and the manager was Simon Rusk.
I can't work out if this is going to be like... Well, it's got to be really low, isn't it?
Follow your heart, Sammy.
I'm just going to say like Woking or something like that.
I want a division.
National League.
Correct.
Yeah, it was Stockport County, wasn't it? In the National League.
Yeah.
Simon Rusk was sacked from in 2021.
Big
Right.
Brain Jack Cummins.
He then did go and take the under-19 job at England. And he was the under-19s manager at St George's Park for a little while before he moved into this role at Southampton. But yeah, I mean, his managerial experience is not that deep.
Do you know who I'm hoping that we can emulate in terms of good wins against caretaker managers? Can you remember Terry Connor, who took temporary charge of Wolves when we beat them 5-0 back in, I think, 2012-13? I'm pretty sure Pogrebniak scored a hat-trick that day. Dempsey definitely scored as well. If we can... And that was a Wolves team on the decline that just didn't know what it was doing, didn't know where it was going.
The idea that they have sacked Bradley, I quite like Russell Martin as a bloke, and I think that quite a lot of the statements out of Southampton have been quite interesting. It's very rare you see a team doing this badly in a division, and the statements are all like, "We appreciate that this is a very difficult task, and the gap between the Championship and the Premier League is so massive these days." You're like, wow, this is it's an excuse puff piece in many ways. But, you know, speaking to people at Saints, and like, there's a lot of love for him behind the scenes in terms of his character and the kind of man he was. There's a little bit of resentment, I think, around the fact that they were like, why didn't you fix some of the really obvious issues in front of you? But like generally, I think they were quite sad to see him go from around the place. But it is quite interesting thinking that they didn't have, you know, I think they would have held on to him if they hadn't been absolutely thumped by Tottenham at the weekend. I really think that there was a kind of case of being like, we know we're not doing very well, but at least we're in games, we're competitive. At 5-0 down, when fans are telling him to give him a wave and then telling him to, wander away politely, you have to watch that as a chairman and be like, I can't be dealing with this. But you know what? Rasmus Ankersen, who left Brentford to join this whole Sport Republic thing, he's got so many appointments wrong. That is, and look, he did a brilliant job as part of that Brentford leadership team. Like, you know, credit where it's due. He goes there, and you think about what's happened here. They left Hasenhüttl in charge too long. They sacked him after there was some obvious bad results. They brought in Nathan Jones. They left Nathan Jones in charge for too long, and by too long I mean more than one single day.
I forgot about the Nathan Jones.
Then
saga.
they signed loads of players for Nathan Jones in the January, like Paul Onuachu, who, you know, a big striker for his system. Then they brought in Ruben Sellers, who played 4-2-2-2 and didn't want a big striker and needed like mobile centre backs, and they had like Dujas Kaleta and like a load of players like that. And you're like, what are you doing? Bella Kotchap and Salas, who were just perennially injured. Then they got relegated. Then they brought in Russell Martin, and okay, fine, kind of shaped the squad to him. And now they've either left Russell Martin in too long, or they've sacked him prematurely. There is no world here where this timing of the sacking makes any sense whatsoever. And that doesn't mean that they're not going to win at the weekend. Before, weirder things have happened than Fulham throwing it away to a team who can't buy a win, right?
Yeah.
But like the nature of this sacking makes absolutely no sense.
No, I mean, I was disappointed because I was just suddenly was thinking, like, was it Russell Martin in charge of that Swansea team when we went and won their 5-1?
Mm-hmm.
And that Swansea team, I'm pretty sure the first goal that we scored that night was the Swansea team playing badly out of the back.
It was, yeah.
Despite the fact they'd been very good for the first half, we were lucky to go in at half-time level. And it's like, that Swansea team has been exactly like the Southampton team. And it's odd with Southampton this season how you've watched them on Match of the Day and every pundit has said the same thing, like, this Southampton team will never stay up playing like this. Everyone's told them. And this has been kind of like, I mean, it's kind of admirable in some ways that they've...
He's the most stubborn man in the entire world, right? Like, this is where we're at.
That disaster is impending. The plane is going down from 35,000 feet. and you're not
and
doing
he's like,
it.
no, I'm not turning the autopilot off.
Yeah.
It seems like it's doing its job.
And you're not doing anything to stop it. It's just absolutely wild. And you are right that in some ways, like, some of it felt unlucky at the start, felt like they were on the wrong side of 5-goal matches and stuff like that. The Leicester game.
They were unlucky not to beat they were better with Newcastle with 11 men, when Newcastle had 11 men, and then they went down to 10 and somehow just crowbarred their way out of that with a 1-0 win. And you were thinking, is this going to be the story of the season for Southampton? And it has been the story of the season for Southampton.
Yeah, it just feels like the plain analogy is a good one. And sacking him at totally the wrong time. They've waited until a whole wing has fallen off. Like, you can't get back from the situation. You might as well, at this point, do a Vincent Kompany. And, like, obviously, famously, he did leave Burnley. And less said about who they've got in charge at the moment, the better. But I don't understand. They know they're going down. Why not stay with the manager that plays football you admire, that can bring you back up? I don't get it at all.
I just wonder if it also got to must have got to a reputation saving face thing. Like, we can't, like, the club can't go through losing 5-0 every week.
I think, like, people leaving their seats in, like, the 23rd minute of a game is the kind of, PR you do not want to be. You have to, at some point, someone's head has to roll for that. And look, whether that's the right person or not, this head has rolled. I think it probably is. I just think we're just way too late.
Yeah.
So anyway, 2-0 Southampton win on Sunday.
Yeah. Kamaldeen Sulemana and Paul Onuachu.
On the Sky,
both restored to the starting line.
on the Sky cameras as well,
Phenomenal.
just to fully embarrass us. From a Fulham
Simon
perspective,
Ruskin getting shouts to the next England manager.
he's going to be going out to the Putney end afterwards, giving it the fist bumps with the away fans cheering. From a Fulham perspective, what do we do here? It feels like maybe we go back with Smith Rowe. You'd have thought he should have a nice time in this game. I don't know. It feels like we've got more options now. We've got Bassi back, of course, as well, which is good.
Yeah, Bass comes back. Actually, we didn't mention Cuenca, who actually I thought had a pretty good game up for the last 10 minutes, and then he went dizzy. But he did do all right up to that point. And bear in mind, that's a bit of a lion's den of a place to be thrown into for your first start in the Premier League. I thought he acquitted himself pretty well until the end. Maybe, if you'd been able to give him 70 minutes, actually, I think if he'd come off at that point, everyone would have been like, yeah, fair enough, good display. Like, he all got a bit mucky at the end. But yeah, I mean,
Pereira suspended.
That solves a headache for Marco because he was very good. And actually, I've been quite interested to see if he wasn't, whether he might have gone with Pereira back in a deeper role, especially against a team where we're expecting to dominate the ball. Now,
Are we expected to dominate the ball, though?
Yeah, we'll expect to dominate. Marco will expect his side to dominate the ball against his Southampton team. Like, it's as simple as that, especially...
Surely if you're Marco, like, let them have the ball a bit.
Yeah, I'm not saying that you want 80% possession.
Like, let them give it to us.
Yeah, obviously you kind of want to get that press working very high, very fast, right? That's an important thing. But I do think that Fulham will look to take this game to Southampton, right? Like, bear in mind, they lost 5-0 last weekend. They are playing Liverpool in midweek, and look, we don't know the outcome of that, but I'd be absolutely astonished if it's not a Liverpool win.
And also, that's a big enough advantage for Fulham when we play Champions League clubs, when another club plays midweek and we have a week's rest. I mean, look, maybe you guys were right all along. Maybe that Preston exit was a good thing because we might have a bit more legs in the tank.
bit pizzazz
for the game against Southampton. For me, I think Bassi will come back into
should do.
This
Cuenca did okay, but as we say, but also Bassi's been one of the players of the season. He should walk straight back into the team. I don't think Anderson's back.
No, and even if he was, I think Diop's doing more than enough at the moment to keep his spot. So you'd have thought probably Berger and Lukic and Smith Rowe.
I think it will be now. I do wonder what it would have looked like if Pereira was available. TC's back. There is a possibility that he goes with a Tom Kearney start here.
I just don't see why though.
I don't think it's just a case of do you need two defensively minded players, or can you? Maybe this is the moment we actually see them freed up a little bit to actually show what they can do from an offensive point of view. Maybe Sasha plays a little bit further forward, and maybe it allows Berger to go on some of those marauding runs that we haven't seen very much of in the last couple of games for very obvious reasons. I think it will be Berger and Lukic.
I think
I wouldn't be absolutely stunned if Tom Kenny comes into the midfield.
I think you need to take every opportunity to build up this Berger and Lukic partnership because it is something special. Like they do seem to really complement each other well, and Berger's just some of his running and all of that. It's just getting better week on week. Probably the debate is up front and on the wings. I mean, up front, I think Jimenez has mostly got it locked. Muniz did score, but it still probably feels like it's Raul's jersey.
Raul played well, I think, generally, across the course of the Liverpool game, and he obviously scored a big goal against Arsenal. Like, he's done nothing to deserve being dropped.
So is it Wilson and
Iwobi?
Yeah,
I'd say it is.
With lack of Nelson now.
I think it's Wilson and Iwobi. I think the Iwobi Robinson axis being re-established on that left-hand side gives us more ability to roam down that flank. I think that Harry Wilson put in a really good shift against Liverpool. He worked incredibly hard and obviously made things happen in terms of the red card, but also in terms of running at that Liverpool team. I don't think that there's any sense that Adama needs to play here. Like, this feels like a game where Harry Wilson might be able to thrive. That's exactly what I would go with. Raul, Iwobi, Smith Rowe, Wilson, Berger, Lukic, Robinson, Bassi, Diop, Tete, Leno.
All right, let's leave the Southampton preview there. Fingers crossed we can do the business. 2:00 on Sunday, by the way.
I think we will win, by the way. Just so, we've been very negative about this. I do fundamentally believe that Fulham will beat Southampton at the weekend and beat them quite comfortably. I think we'll win this game 3-0.
No, I for what it's worth, I think I've seen some people comparing it to the Burnley game last year, maybe just because of the time of year, because it was about this time last year.
We've got Sander Berger now.
I think Wolves was our Burnley last season. I think that's our outlier result from this year. I wouldn't be surprised, but I think if we did lose this game, it would be a dramatic kind of late goal in a tight game. I don't think that they'll come and do a job on us.
I'd be very upset if we lose this game.
Yeah, I'd be
genuinely really upset. I came out of the Wolves game and I was frustrated, but there was an element I was kind of all the things have fallen against us there. It's not ideal, and also we always lose on the back of an international break for whatever reason. But I would be absolutely livid if we lose to Southampton at the weekend.
Yeah. Any Southampton fan right now is thinking that we win this game as well.
I thought you were going to say any Southampton fan is clipping up that bit of the podcast and saving it for.
No, but that's fine. I think it's perfectly reasonable for me to be angry at a team that have picked up 5 points all season and come into the cottage when we're on the brink of European contention. That's perfectly reasonable.
Absolutely. I also am feeling very nervous about it because it feels, we all remember Burnley last year, we all remember Wolves last month, but we should definitely beat them. Yeah, they're so bad. Yeah. And they think they're so bad as well. So
there's no one here we're going to go and do a job at Fulham at the weekend.
Yeah. If
they do, then fair enough. But
it's always just it's a new manager, isn't it? There's just that fear. I think if it had been Russell Martin, I think we'd all be going
the Simon Rusk bounce.
Yeah,
here we go.
Right, let's do some questions. This one from Mark Walsh says: Is the evidence finally in? Dyeing your hair blonde impacts your footballing performance. Wind the clock back a short while, and we had Pereira, Wilson, and Jedi all with dyed blonde locks. Wilson lost his place in the team. Jedi was good but not great, and Andreas was getting worse week after week. Slowly, the blonde locks disappeared. Then what happened? Wilson can't stop scoring for club or country. Jedi pockets Salah and Saka in successive weeks. I was like, when did he pocket Louis Saha? And then Pereira gives into style sense, starts against Liverpool and scores. Do we need clearer evidence?
I mean, know.
As a dark-haired man yourself, I'm sure.
Look,
who has had highlights in the past? There are some photos out there.
I did like my golden highlights. It wasn't quite this kind of peroxide blonde. I just had sort of streaks of gold through my hair. So it's not quite the same. Look, I'm not going to comment on this in that I don't think it's probably serious, but it's clearly working. Everybody keep your hair dark.
Next one from Grace Stevens. Hi, Fulhamish lot. Hope you're all well. I'm emailing today for a bit of a rant about my experience in the Fulham end at the game at Anfield. I don't know if this was the same for anyone else, but I felt like I was surrounded by Liverpool fans who barely struggled to keep their affiliations known. Granted, I was sat in AL6 by the divider, but I would say that about 75% of my row were home fans with the odd Fulham fan in front of me. It was made obvious when Pereira scored and hardly anyone celebrated. I even asked asked the guys either side of me if they were Liverpool fans in disguise, it was made a lot more obvious at Gakpo's goal when a lot of them cheered. Is this a consequence of the membership system in which anyone can sign up for priority ticket access? I know if I was a Liverpool fan, it might be easier to spend the price for membership and the ticket than fight to get in the home end, but it just doesn't sit right with me. If you're going to sit behind enemy lines, at least go incognito. It made me feel really comfortable and out of place, but in the end only made me sing louder and celebrate hard in their faces. Yes, Grace. Is there no better way that the club could vet members better? Feel like this email might be just me shouting into the wind, but felt good to get it out. That's from Grace. I mean, this was an issue. A lot of people
I spoke last year at the Carabao Cup game, right?
Yeah, the Carabao Cup game wasn't so bad, although we were next to 3 fans in Liverpool hats.
They were removed quite swiftly, to be fair, after a big amount of arguing with the stewards.
An incredible amount of arguing. Yeah. Like, you were like, the stewards like, they're not really doing anything. There's like, they're wearing Liverpool hats and smiling at us. They're doing a fair amount of goading here. I know that this was bad at the 4-3 last year in particular. Dan Cook, who was there, said it was terrible, and Dom came back from the game on Saturday, and Dom's pretty level-headed. He's seen it all when it comes to football, but he was, just like, what a waste of time effectively in terms of being in that end. You could even see when Muniz scored, you could see the reverse angle, and yes, you could see some Fulham fans celebrating, but you could also quite clearly make out a few fans just there motionless as Rodrigo Muniz celebrated. I think for me it's kind of obvious. Like, it was a week before Christmas. There aren't 3,000 Fulham fans wanting to go to Anfield, and the fact is that we sold out our allocation. So in some ways it has to be made up from some level of not away fans.
Well, like, I think that maybe I struggle with this in terms of, if someone is a Liverpool fan who lives in London and they have a Fulham membership and they go to a couple of games a season, right? Which is, this is something we have to kind of accept as part of the fan base, because it's been like this since Fulham got promoted in 2001, right? Yeah. The people who were fans of other teams bought season tickets or memberships, and look, a lot of those people morphed into Fulham fans, right? A lot of those people became Fulham fans and kind of discarded their previous, allegiances. To a point, like, to that.
I think there's a few cases of that maybe being the case, but I think even if you were that person, I think you would go to a game like this and you maybe would sit in the fence inside. But I think this is more like,
I think it's touts. I don't think this is Liverpool fans buying memberships to Fulham for 50 quid to then buy a 30 quid away ticket once a season. That doesn't make any sense.
But you can also then go to the home game.
Right, okay.
I think it's similar to the best way to get tickets to the darts this Christmas is to become a member of British Darts or something like that, and therefore you get priority ticket access to go to Ali Pali. And I know, again, using Dom as the example, he's actually so into the darts, he goes to the bloody Blackpool Open and all of them. But most people don't. Most people just get the membership so they can have their massive piss up at Ali Pali and go to the darts once. They don't really care about the darts. Fine, they've sold out to that crowd literally as soon as they signed up to Matchroom or whatever. That was always the crowd they were going to attract. But I think people are desperate enough to go see Liverpool that people will buy Fulham memberships. They might use it again.
I think there probably should be a system here. That the problem is, right, that you kind of look at that and you think about it, and we spoke about Chelsea on the podcast and the ticketing thing with that the other week. But also, that was a kind of free for all. When you kind of look at actually what's happening in terms of these ones, as it goes down the order, and you get the points and all of those things that kind of drip down, there probably should be a minimum expectation, right? That you've been to, 5 games in the last 2 years before you're entitled to go to tickets for this. Like, surely they can level a bottom element of this that shows that you have, a historical loyalty before you're allowed to buy this as your first ticket in a membership.
I think the difficulty is that the club...
I do think a lot of it's touts, though, I'll be honest. Like, I think a lot of touts will have Fulham memberships. They will buy tickets to the bottom of these, and then they will sell them on to other people. I would suggest that's a far bigger problem. And again, I'm working on conjecture here.
Yeah.
But I would be shocked if that's not a much bigger problem than, like, Liverpool fans in Liverpool buying Fulham memberships to then buy an away ticket once a year. Like, I feel like that's nuts. right?
I think there will be.
Don't get me wrong. I'm sure it happens here and there, maybe 3 or 4 people. Yeah?
I think, yeah.
But I reckon there are 100 touts with Fulham memberships who, as soon as this got to membership sale, will have bought them and thought I can flog them to Liverpool fans.
The problem is that especially a week before Christmas up in Liverpool, if let's say we were playing, I'm trying to think, there aren't really any small Northwest clubs left in the Premier League, but let's say we were facing a Blackburn or Bolton at this time, I think we'd have maybe 100, 1,500 Fulham fans go to Ewood Park.
I wish you had 100. I was like, I think we'd have more than 100.
Back in the day, we might have.
Yeah.
But I think we'd have that.
1,000 maybe, yeah.
And look, you maybe would add that Liverpool's slightly more attractive.
So double it.
Than that. I think Fulham are doing well to get 2,000 real Fulham fans going to Ann. I didn't go. It's a really tough one. The trains are not cheap and it's a difficult match. Though these matches just before Christmas are always quite unattractive because people are busy, right? So I think that it is clear that if there is 3,000 fans in there, that a big part of that is the Liverpool factor, and that there are people either going just to see Liverpool or they're neutrals or whatever, an experience to go to Anfield. It's not easy to get those tickets. The club, though, the way that they sell away tickets is that they have to basically buy them all off the home club.
Yeah,
and then effectively recoup the money.
Yeah,
so any unsold away
sits
ticket
on Fulham, right?
Sits on Fulham and not Liverpool. So therefore, it's in Fulham's interest to just get rid of all of the tickets.
Yeah, and that makes sense, right?
And so therefore, they're not going to add something like loyalty points to something that might risk unsold tickets. I kind of understand the club's predicament.
The logic on that makes sense, right? I get that. But can you not ask for a 2,000 allocation and then if they all sell out? Then okay, maybe you could extend the allocation. Maybe that defeats the whole object.
I think you probably have to make your choice. I think, and this is probably where the club.
We have definitely had games where the club have, after original sale, extended the allocation.
I think only maybe. I think Liverpool will go and sell those tickets. If you say to Liverpool, we want your small allocation of 1,700 or whatever it is, I think Liverpool will go, okay, thank you very much. We'll sell the rest of those tickets. We've got enough people that will buy them. So I think 100%. Fulham have to make that decision. I think though, that they should realistically start doing that. Take a smaller allocation, make it more in demand. Some people might miss out on tickets from doing that. Put it on the loyalty points. I mean, obviously, we didn't do that for our biggest away game of the season as Chelsea.
Yeah, it's just absolutely nuts.
Which is absolutely stupid. But I think that's what we're going to have to do because otherwise, it does suck. And I think the Carabao Cup game was different. I think a lot more Fulham fans made the effort to go to that semi-final. And whilst we did see 3 isolated Liverpool fans, I think actually...
It did feel quite isolated, you're right.
I think that was very isolated. I think these league games, though, really do feel like... And it's weird because it doesn't really happen at any other away. I was at Man United on the first game of the season, and no way did that feel like there was anyone else but Fulham fans in that end. It just does seem something that seems to be a Liverpool problem.
But it's one of those things. I think that the demand for tickets at Anfield is obviously through the roof, and considering that they obviously are now top of the league on top of everything else, that helps. Whereas I think at Old Trafford, one, it's obviously a bigger stadium, but two, it feels like less demand. I've been up visiting in these cities, and I've gone to Old Trafford to watch Man United play, Burnley or something on a night, and it wasn't that tricky to get a ticket. Whereas I've been in Liverpool and be like, I wonder what it's like to sit in the Kop or, to actually watch it from a Liverpool perspective. And it's always been impossible. So I think that's to do with demand as much as anything else.
Yeah, and also I think demand from Fulham fans too. I think going to that first game at Old Trafford, it was the first game of the season. We hadn't seen any football all summer. I think that was a big game that lots of people wanted to go to. A week before Christmas when we were facing Liverpool, and Liverpool is that little bit further than Manchester and a little bit harder to get to. So I think that the club do need to look into maybe trying to take a smaller allocation. But I also think that as long as the system exists like it does, they will their first priority will just be to shift the tickets.
But even I went to Manchester United when it was the last game of the season a couple of seasons ago, and that was an overwhelmingly Fulham fan contingent, even though there was really no point in going. It was a dead rubber game. I mean, a fab day out. But I think with Liverpool it is different, and we notice it at every Fulham home game against the Big Six, but with Liverpool it feels particularly bad. That's my experience at least. The club could do more if they wanted to. They just don't. And like, I think Jack's right that it's overwhelmingly touts. If you're able to buy a ticket for 30 quid and sell it for, whatever, triple that.
Yeah, that I really do think it's
then, like, especially this time of year when money's a bit tougher, like, I kind of get it. Like, I understand why it's happening, even if I don't agree with it. But yeah, I don't think there's much we can do as fans, unfortunately.
Yeah. This next question from Georgie Brooke. Fine Fulhamish folk. I've seen a lot of talk online from various outlets getting a bit frustrated at the recent performances of our record signing, Emil Smith-Rowe. And please don't get me wrong, I'm not the guy who refuses to see issues, happily humming uplifting music in my mind whilst thinking all is rosy, sticking my fingers in my ear and hearing our prayers can do no wrong. ESR has disappeared for long periods from many games recently, more so against Spurs and Arsenal recently. I have several issues with those starting to write him off so early. Nothing wrong with questioning players, especially given the price tag and early season form regarding the player in question. My issues are as follows. I'm going to summarise this as best as I can. First of all, he says that Silva is a tinkerer and he sets up very different tactically against lots of different teams, so that must be difficult for Smith-Rowe to know exactly where he plays, considering that Silva tries lots of different tactics. We have lower possession against better teams, which means that Smith-Rowe will get less chances on the ball. He says, has any number 10 actually looked great under Silva? I'm not convinced Carvalho counts, as we could afford a luxury 10 whilst dominating most teams. Silva asks ESR to run point on our press like he did with Pereira last year, and asks him to tuck in on the right when we don't have the ball. How much time and energy does that leave him to do what a 10 really should be doing? And then 4, he says, how many times have we been here where players have been written off after 10 games? Silva's system has proven hard to learn. So, yeah, basically, Georgie has given a lot of defences here for Emil Smith-Rowe. And actually, reading through them, as someone that has been a bit disappointed with Smith-Rowe this year. I mean, we spent £30 million on him. He's been quite good in some games, but has also gone missing in a few recently. But I think he does make very salient points there.
Yeah, and as in, I don't think anyone's. Well, I mean, some people might be, but I'm definitely not writing off Emil Smith-Rowe as a bad signing. I think he's been, a pretty good signing, to be general. I do, however, struggle with the idea of him playing in games against teams against the Big Six where we're going to have less of the ball and we're asking our kind of attacking midfielder to tuck in and be one of the three. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't play to any of his strengths. And if we knew we were going to do this, and that's not necessarily a slight on Smith-Rowe, but if we knew we were going to do this, is that the player you signed for £35 million? Like, yes, Georgie makes some points there that your 10 is expected to lead the press and tuck in on the right in a Silva system. It's exactly what your 10 is supposed to do in this system. And you're like, how much energy does that leave for him to do other things? Well, that's the role. That's the role that Fulham have been using a 10 for since Silva came into this side. So I don't think it necessarily, that they kind of exhumes him from allowing him to. He has to do those duties. We also expect him to be good when he's on the ball. I think it's perfectly reasonable points to say that he needs time. He'll take some time to settle, all of these things. But you can't use as an excuse, we have the ball less when we play the top 6 teams. Of course we do. But therefore your 10 is expected to lead the press. He's expected to work hard. All the things that Andreas offers, right? And yes, is Andreas as good on the ball as Emil Smith-Rowe? No, of course he's not. Of course he's not. And he doesn't have the ability to unlock a defence in the same way that Emil Smith-Rowe does. But are you asking then for a £35 million signing to only play against teams below you? Because that's probably not what you kind of are asking for from a club record signing. So there's one of two things here. Either Smith-Rowe has to get sharper and fitter, and yes, all of those things are going to take time, right? So this is not criticism. It's just a kind of, we look at it. But I think that if we are saying, as is pointed out here, that in games where we're playing against bigger teams, he's going to have less of the ball and therefore can be less effective. Well, we need our biggest players to step up in those games against big teams if Fulham wants to compete and actually be in this conversation for Europe. And so far, I think Emil Smith-Rowe has been good against teams below us. I think he's been okay in certain games with teams around us, and I think he's been relatively poor in games against the big teams. He's been dropped for Liverpool and against Manchester City, and he was pretty poor against Spurs and against Arsenal. Now, that's a relatively small sample size, and maybe he'll turn it around, and I'm with Georgie in that I think we should be giving him time to work it out. But I'm not going to sit here and say that he's been, a perfectly good signing and that everything is rosy until we start seeing those performances against teams that aren't Leicester. And, I'm sure he might score a hat-trick the weekend against Southampton, but that isn't probably going to change the narrative until I see him deliver in a big game. Even Brighton, I think he struggled. Like, when you need a player who's bringing energy and dynamism in the middle, he is not currently that player. He might be in 6 months' time, but I think it's too early to judge him as a signing. But right now, if you were offering me, any game on Boxing Day against Chelsea, I don't want to see Emil Smith Rowe in the starting lineup.
Yeah.
Like, do you?
I think not when it's been proven that the Pereira, Lukic, Berger works so well against teams that you're going to have not very much of the ball against.
Yeah, he has to learn that, and he has to develop into a player that's going to fit into that system and be able to do different things. Look, we've talked about this so many times, but what is the thing we praise Fulham for the most? Versatility, adaptability. All right, we know that you're good on the ball when we have loads of possession. Right, now learn the other facets. Of course, it's going to take time. That's not me writing him off at all. But I would struggle to suggest that he should start on Boxing Day.
I think also it is possible for teams lower down the divisions to have luxury players, and there has been proof of teams being able to have a luxury. I mean, the obvious example that I can't get out of my head is like, I don't think Villa dropped Jack Grealish for games against the top six
Grealish
away.
Is a brilliant work rate, though. Always did.
Yeah, I know, but that's something that Smith, you can learn a little bit. Work. Right?
I think it honestly is a question of, but also like as much as anything else, and this is to kind of agree with Georgie, conditioning and the fact that he didn't have a full pre-season because he was torn between, Arsenal and Fulham in that period, and there was, will he, won't he, is he going to move, is someone else getting involved, all of these different questions. I don't think he got that full pre-season to get up to full fitness. And when we get that, and maybe next season we will see that like Emil Smith Rowe in his fullness. That's not to say that this season's a write-off. It's just to say that I think he's going to have to be in and out of the side a little bit in certain games in order to try and get the best out of him when he is in games that suit him. That's fine. But by next year, I expect to see that step up again.
Yeah, and he makes a good point about Sasa Lukic.
Yeah, it takes time. I get it. Like, it's fine. It's not necessarily a criticism. And I don't think we should be writing him off. But equally, that doesn't mean that I am going to sit here and not criticise him when he goes missing in big games, because when you're a £35 million player, that's what happens, right?
Yeah. 2 more emails. This one from Tim Lundy. This is praise for a new signing. Hi team, long-time listener, tediously frequent emailer. For me, Sanderberg is fast becoming my favourite Fulham player. When he is on his game, he is one of the classiest operators in the league. And whilst he showed some good stuff against weaker teams previously, he is now doing the business against the better teams. Given the position he plays, his relative experience and his seemingly unflappable demeanour, do you think he could be a future Fulham captain? He's not necessarily the most demonstrative personality, but definitely has a bit of the quiet, accomplished leader aura about him, and is physically very capable at leading both defensive and offensive momentum on the pitch. I mean, he is definitely captain material. I don't know if you saw the interview that he did with Ivan. I just saw a little clip of it after the game in the dugout in the Riverside. But and Ivan, it was after the Arsenal game, and he asked him. It was a simple question, probably a good answer for the crowd, and it looks good in hindsight. But he said, what are you expecting against Liverpool? And he's like, no, we're going to go there. We can go there and win. And
everyone goes berserk.
Everyone was like, hey! But it was one of those.
Give him the armband now.
Yeah. It was just one of those answers for me that I just liked it. He just he did just have an aura about him when he answered that particular question. I mean, I think Tim speaks a lot of sense.
Yeah, I don't mind it. I think that there are players who I would currently have above him in the pecking order in terms of where I'd be looking to give the armband out, if and when TC decides that he is going to call time on his time at Fulham. But I think right now you'd probably give it to Jedi, right? Like the man, one, wearing the armband, but two, who has been the stalwart, who I think he's on something like a 46 games without missing a game for Fulham. Like there's only like 2 streaks longer than that in the entire Premier League. He's been, ever present. He is constantly working. And I think that there is that feel of kind of respect for him in the dressing room as well. He's evolved into a real leader in this group. So if we had to decide on a new captain next season right now, I wouldn't give it to Sander Berger, but I don't think that writes him off from a future leadership role.
Yeah.
I think you'd probably say that maybe Joachim Andersen potentially, steps into that breach at times as well. But Yeah, I mean, I don't see why not as a kind of long-term option.
Yeah. Finally, just enjoyed this from Edmund Peru. Hello, Fulhamish. Couple of snaps from watching this weekend's draw at Cosm in Los Angeles this weekend at 6 a.m.
cool.
local time. As you'd expect, mostly Arsenal fans, but a good few Fulham fans in fine voice. Commentary pumped in from the US Peacock stream. The camera angle cuts back and forth with cameras also behind the goal. He said there were a few technical glitches with the dome screens needing to be reset 3 or 4 times, with chance of you don't know what you're doing at the poor bloke trying to sort it out.
Good stuff.
But nonetheless, incredible technology to be able to experience a taste of Craven Cottage, a good 5,500 miles away from SW6. Looking forward to being at the cottage for real against Southampton at a more sociable hour with more layers required. So he has a couple of photos there. We'll put them on the YouTube stream as well of his
very,
photos.
very
So
cool.
if you haven't seen Cosm, I'm maybe need to explain it. It's
That's
this venue, and he said it's in LA. I believe it's only in LA, where they've kind of
two
made
of them, isn't there?
I think there is
The one
another
in
one.
Vegas.
Maybe. Anyway, this screen is kind of mostly wraparound, and you sit in like a theatre style. It's a bit like you're at a wraparound cinema, effectively. But what they show is the wide angle of football matches. And so the kind of idea is that you feel like you're in the crowd. And I think you might have seen a couple of videos of this. And when people actually take a video of Cosm, it catches me out every time because I think they're there.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Oh, that's a cool angle. They're at the game, and then suddenly, oh wait, no, they pan around. They're at some, I don't know, parking lot in Santa Barbara or something like that. It is awesome and quite cool to see Craven Cottage featured. I think one's coming to Dubai only because I actually know someone who has been working on this.
There you go.
So I actually knew about this technology ages ago and them saying that this was coming. And I remember when they told me, I was like, oh yeah, 3D immersive experience. That sounds
It
crap.
does look really cool, I gotta say.
But yeah, it does sound awesome. I mean, there would be not much point or demand for this in the UK, I don't think.
Maybe I could watch the basketball.
Yeah.
Or the NFL. Or the baseball. Now I'm really into baseball. Go Mets.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what I did in the summer. I got really into baseball.
Fair enough.
Like,
as if you didn't have enough sports or teams on the go.
I do a lot of late night work, right? Like with you guys, but also with ranks and whatever. And it's when I'm sort of typing or scripting, I like to have something on in the background. And often, the football has finished by that point. So I got into the summer and there was just every time you flicked on TNT, there was a baseball game going on. And so actually it's really easy because you don't have to watch it all the time because it takes ages for stuff to happen.
Yeah.
And you can kind of just look up and see it. It's actually a really good sport to work to.
Okay.
In the same way that cricket is, you can have the cricket on in the background.
Yeah.
And you can work away.
Or the darts at the moment.
No, you can't. Well, the darts is too immersive. Darts is too much. I love the darts. But no, yeah, cricket, golf you can have on in the background as well, but baseball in the summer because those things tend to not happen in the middle of the night. Baseball, great, fantastic, enjoyed it. Let's go Mets.
Right, fair enough.
Enough about baseball. This has gone on a lot of tangents today, hasn't it? We've had a good chat about Simon Rusk. We've had a chat about baseball, whether Southampton took too long in sacking Russell Martin. We've really gone off Fulham today.
Yeah, we were supposed to do This Will Catch On, but we'll have to park that for another day. Jack, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sammy. Always a pleasure.
Liz, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And Fulhamish will be back on Monday. Liz, you're hosting.
I'm hosting. It's going to be a stellar lineup. Should be with you by, I hope, Monday evening.
Yeah, so Liz and team are going to have the full reaction to whatever happens on Sunday against Southampton. Have a lovely weekend. And this is my last pod for Christmas. So Merry Christmas to you. Thank you for listening and watching this year. Jack, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sammy. Merry Christmas, everybody. I'll see you after that Boxing Day fixture against Chelsea, where I'll be hosting Fazan Dome, I think, which should be a lively lineup.
And I'm back after Bournemouth.
Exactly.
Now we're just announcing the full Fulhamish schedule.
Yeah, this is it. This is where we roll now. This is how we finish things.
That's the Fulhamish podcast for 2024.
That will do it. That will do it.
Have a great weekend. Come on, you Whites.
You Whites.